This is a little bit more of a long-term review of a 2018 GasGas XC 300. From a average trail rider, enduro, uncompetitive enduro racer, single track, you know, that kind of thing, hard adventure riding perspective. So I've had this bike for about 40 hours. The bike itself probably has about 80 hours on it. And to give you the cliff notes, if you want to stop watching now, nothing has gone wrong with it. The bike has been great. It's got its quirks like every bike, but nothing has broken. I haven't had to order parts to fix some kind of, you know, problem that I have not caused. And it's generally been a very solid bike. So if you're thinking of buying one of these, there's no reason not to. And give it a try. It will not disappoint you, especially at the price. My previous two bikes were KTM's. I've had in the last few months have had the opportunity to ride a bunch of KTM's, a bunch of betas, some demo rides. All of my friends are on KTM's, and at no point really have I thought, hey, I wish I would have bought a different bike. It's very comparable to a beta, the beta with the KYB suspension, the 2020 300 RR Race Edition. I had the opportunity to ride it a few weeks ago at a demo, and this bike is very, very similar. So it's the new KTM's are a little bit different. The ergonomics are different, and this bike is more ergonomically like a pre-2017 KTM, except it has a much better suspension. But as far as ergonomics go, it's very similar. When you get on it, you're like, hey, this is just like a pre-2017 KTM. The 2017s are a little bit different. So going a little bit more into it, so I've like I said, I put 40 hours on it. I've ridden it all over Michigan, which is sand, some rocks, roots, single track, mud. I've did the Colorado 600 on this bike, so I put a dual sport kit on it and rejetted it. It did great there. I had to soften the suspension a little bit. So that's, you know, all rocks, high elevation. We rode some really, really hard single track. That was probably some of the hardest stuff I've done. Have ridden an enduro in Indiana, Ohio. So it's been all over the place in all kinds of different terrain. I had to adjust the suspension a little bit. Obviously rejet for elevation in Colorado, but aside from that, really have not had to make any major changes to it. I put mousses in the tires, but and I'm running Shinko 216 MX up front, which is a golden tire knockoff, and the 505 cheater in the back. It works well as kind of an all-around setup for me. So as far as issues go, there really have not been any major issues, like I said in my little summary. The only problems that I have had is I had the float stick a little bit, so just, you know, start dumping gas. It happened to me on my KTM as well. It's a Cayenne carb. I don't think it's anything related to this bike. It probably just sat for a while and the float was dirty. So I cleaned all that up. It hasn't happened since. And the other issue that I personally have had a little bit, but I've seen other people have this problem really badly, and it's kind of hard to get a shot of it here. You can't really see it, but the clutch cover is very weak on these bikes, and it's known to crack if you hit it on something. At the last enduro I did, there was actually a guy that had to pull out because he cracked his clutch cover. and I parked next to a couple guys with GasGas's. Both of them had recluse covers because both of them cracked their clutch covers. So if you are going to race a lot and be on rocks, that might be a good investment, is getting a recluse clutch cover that's a lot thicker apparently. That being said, I have put this bike through hell, which I'll go into in a second here. It's I've had when I was transporting the bike, a foot peg bent the bottom of mine of another bike. But other than that, I mean, the clutch cover is scuffed, but it's had no issues. I've dropped this bike on rocks many times. I've dropped it on rocks like 4 times today, and it has not broken on me. So maybe I'm just lucky, and they'll probably break the next time I drop the bike. But yeah, so that's just something to consider. As far as so 40 hours, you know, not all that much, depending on how you ride and what you ride, but this bike has been put kind of through hell by me. All of my riding is pretty difficult for me anyway, so I fall a lot, and you can actually see this gives you a testament to the durability of this motorcycle, which is one of the good things. The radiator is kind of an S shape, still holds water fine, not a problem. The pipe is bent. I hit it on some cement pipes today. The subframe is bent because I'm pretty bad at doing any sort of wheelies. The other radiator is actually also bent. The shifter is bent. At the last enduro I fell on some roots and it actually bent the shifter all the way back, which is kind of cool because I was just able to kick it back into place and keep going. It didn't break, which was awesome. Yeah, so it's very durable bikes. I mean, I've crashed this thing a lot, and a lot of it was on rocks in Colorado. Some of it was a decent clip, and you know, you just pick the bike up and you keep going. The only thing I had to replace were the bark busters, which the ones that came from the previous owner were kind of bad. I put some Cycra ones on here because those are my personal favorite. I seem to not be able to destroy them, even though I try to. So durability is very good. The other good thing that I really like is the engine. The engine is super smooth. Like when I did the demo ride, you know, I rolled like 8 betas, a couple KTMs, and out of all of them, except for the vibrations kind of suck, but the engine on this thing is just such a sweetheart. It's so smooth. It doesn't have any like jerkiness of some of the other bikes. It just pulls, and it's fantastic. And it starts easily. The transmission is wonderful. It shifts well. The oil, when I drain it, always looks great. My KTM 200, you ride it for like 20 minutes and the oil is black. And this thing, I ride it for 15 hours and I can still see through the oil in the little window, which might just be different clutch material, but in general, it seems like it runs really clean. It barely smokes at all. It's very clean running bike. The suspension is fantastic. It's a little bit harsh. I would say it's a lot harsher than the new Explore forks, specifically the forks on the KTMs. Those are like being on a magic carpet. Those are super plush, but I will say this suspension is very confidence inspiring. It's in my opinion, for my kind of riding, I can ride this bike faster than any of the other bikes that I've been on, the betas, the KTMs, and that's just me. I'm maybe used to it a little bit more, but it's very confidence inspiring. It's, you know, it's not like being in a Cadillac on the trail, but when you hit stuff, the bike stays going straight. It doesn't bounce you off the trail. There's lots of traction, so it does what it's supposed to do. The chassis ergonomics, that's another good thing that I really like, the way that everything's laid out. It's a very comfortable bike, except for one thing which I'll mention in a second. You get on it and you're instantly comfortable. I have the KTM foot pegs on it now because I broke the GasGas ones. The bike actually just fell over in the garage and one of the pegs shattered. So I have KTM ones on here, which I don't like as much as the GasGas ones. The GasGas ones are a little wider, so I'll probably have to replace those. Everything is where you expect it to be. Everything is really nice. The brakes, even though they're not Brembos, they're actually really, really good. They have great feel. They're not overpowering. You can slide the rear end around, a lot of control. The front end has just enough grip to prevent you from, wiping out in the front. So the brakes are really good. I've ridden a lot of KTMs with Brembos. I don't think these feel any worse than Brembos, in my opinion. Some bikes you get on them and you're like, what is wrong with this thing? The brakes suck. These are just as good as Brembos, in my opinion. So that is great. The other awesome thing about this bike is the cheapness of the parts. They are in some cases like 50% or half the price of KTM parts. Like it's plastics or some of the other stuff. I think I bought all the stuff I needed for the lights for about $200, which is rear tail section, the whole headlight, some wiring, some switches, and I mean, you can't buy a dual sport kit, like an aftermarket one, for that. A KTM headlight alone from KTM is going to run you over $200. So the parts are cheap, which is awesome. The negative part about this is the parts take a long time to get. It took me sometimes a couple weeks to get the parts, but apparently you just have to, sorry about that, apparently you just have to call the people sometimes. They are and then you can get your parts quickly. So that's how you get parts quickly if you need to. But obviously you're not going to have 5 dealers to choose from in your local area like you would with a KTM or Honda or Yamaha or something like that. It's a much more niche brand. It's probably one of the harder ones to get parts for, maybe like a Sherco. So that's a negative. Another bad thing that is I forgot to mention earlier is this seat is absolutely terrible. I've ridden a 690 with a stock seat to Alaska, and I did not have as many problems with that seat as this seat. It is the hardest seat ever. Like, if you get onto a stock KTM, Yamaha, whatever, after riding this bike for a couple hours, you feel like you're in a lazy boy. This, I don't know what is wrong with this seat, but it is really bad. So one of the other good things is the bike looks freaking sweet. Yeah, I've had like 3 people today come up to me and say, hey, that's a sweet looking bike. Hey, that's a beautiful bike, which never happens on a KTM. It literally has never happened for the 250 hours that I rode it. Everybody loved the 200, but nobody said, hey, that's a beautiful bike. But these bikes just look cool. They just do. Even mine that's all beat up, everybody still loves it. A couple other small nitpicky things that I've noticed in my ownership experience. So if the vibration is bad, that's I don't really notice it now, but if you're coming from a different bike, you will probably notice it. If you're coming from the Beta, you won't notice it because those things also vibrate like crazy. But the vibrations actually loosen some fasteners. I've had the kickstand almost fall off a few times. So I had to keep tightening that and lock tightening that. It seems like it's staying on now. There are a few other bolts that I had to retighten. That was, but it happens on a lot of bikes, but that's just something to keep in mind. If you do buy one of these, you will want to either go through and Loctite everything from the get-go, and then keep a good eye on it. So yeah, in summary, 40 hours, this has been a great bike. Does exactly what I want it to do all the time. Cheap parts, easy to work on, reliable, looks good, different than what everybody else is riding. I've had a bunch of other people ride this bike, and they're kind of considering these as well. And at least right now, the pricing, you can't beat it. You're saving money over pretty much every other brand, including Beta. It's unbeatable. So if you've been considering one of these, I would strongly recommend it. There's no reason not to buy one. I guess the only reason not to buy one is if you have arthritis and the vibrations will absolutely drive you crazy. Then go get a KTM. Those are sweet, smooth motors, awesome suspension, super plush, super comfortable. But if you want something a little bit different, something that still kind of kicks ass with a really awesome engine and suspension and great ergonomics, it's a little bit cheaper, by all means, go get yourself a GasGas. This thing's awesome.